Well, looking at our favorite players, kind of like almost like talking like a quick hit story, but on the podcast a little bit, kind of an open discussion maybe about players that we've seen at our events so far this year. So looking at the preseason pro case first, like Def and him, and I know you guys were like really locked in on reports, and Drew, you were there as well, running the event and checking up on players as well. But I just want to open it up to like just first initial takes on some of these guys that you saw, maybe some of your favorite player, biggest winner, whatever you want to go with it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two biggest winners have to be Enzo and CJ, right? I mean, the two players that earned an invite to the Super 60, which is now the fourth year in a row that's happened. I mean, we can talk about let's go CJ first. I mean, you just look at him. There's obviously a ton still in the frame, like wide shouldered, lean, young looking, and then you watch him swing, take his rounds of BP. I mean, he took a great round of BP at the Pro Case, and I would say the Super 60 was even better. It's just super easy, still a ton of project on. The way he moves around third base, being that long levered, super natural, super smooth. There's a ton to like there. And then Enzo, I mean, he's just long been one of the best bats in the Midwest, and I would think now, I mean, absolutely fit right in at the Super 60. So I would think he's in that discussion on like a national level now as like one of the better national bats, and that's probably underselling it. But I think he like there's moving parts, but he sequences really well. He's always on time, a ton of strength in there. He's polished, and there's just a ton of like there. And he's obviously got a ton of arm strength behind the plate. I mean, getting up to 85. I think he was second um, at the Super 60 with 85 miles an hour, which was only behind Quinn Shambo, which is another Illinois guy. So, and yeah, if anyone had anything to add
Yeah,
there,
Pete, can I jump in
yeah,
really
go
quick?
ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I kind of look back with Enzo back to what Adam Christ had told us about like the chase rate out of the zone and things like that. And Enzo, I feel like anytime I've seen him is always good about not swinging out of the zone. And he's, like you said, has good bat to ball skills. And Adam Chris was talking about like developing power as they get older, but Enzo has that now um, as well. So I just think that's interesting. Like you said, really good bat. But no, that's all I had on him.
No, I think you kind of hit it like both of you guys. So Enzo Infeliz, Providence Catholic. He's committed to Cincinnati. Um, it's we see guys all the time that can hit, maybe lack a little power, or guys that maybe swing and miss, chase, strike out, but have a ton of power. Like Enzo has both. He can really hit, and he can hit for power, and he uses the whole field. It's not an all pull approach. He's got just as much juice to right center as he does to left center. The one thing about him is he's always hit. He's a hitter. Like that's just in him. He's hit high level arms. I know he showed it this past summer hitting high level arms. I thought the frame looked, a little more cut than before, where it was like quality strength or just quality kind of transforming of his body, which as he continues to do that, it's only going to help his prospect status. It's going to help his foot speed. I think he ran a 7.20, which for him catching, a guy that can hit with power, like you're going to, that's okay that's like his worst tool. You know what I mean? Like his run tool. So that, I mean, and then he's always had the arm strength. I saw him really working pitches in the bullpen setting, like really trying to stick some pitches. I didn't see all of the bullpens during the Super 60, but the ones I did with him, like I was like, all right, like Enzo's taking this game speed. I thought it looked good, and really, really good showing for him. And then if I want to get into CJ Kinga here, like Manuka prospect, I know when we got on with Sean Duncan talking about just some of the great players that have come through Illinois, like they had Mike Fultonevich come through Manuka. They've had a lot of guys come through Manuka. Johnny Butler, center fielder that went on to play at NC State after going JUCO. He was a little bit before your guys' time. But next in line, man, I think a lot of people are going to have to be out this spring to see CJ. Like it is really, really good right now, and that ceiling just continues to get higher, in my opinion. Like breaking down what you're talking about, you talked about, hey, his BP round at the Pro Case was really solid, but I do think he took a more impressive BP round at the Super 60 in front of more and more people, higher ups. What also impressed me was every single metric at the Super 60 improved from the ProCase pretty much. I was looking at his profile here just to break it down, but he ran a 6.82 at the ProCase. He runs a 6.77 at the Super 60. He's 93 across the infield at the Super 60. He's 92 at the ProCase. He's got a 102 exit velocity at the Super 60. It's 100 at the ProCase. And this is all to go with a 6'4", 200-pound frame. And if that's not enough, he gets on our jump mat. We are now using Vald athletic testing for our 60s, our jump mat, and he had a top 5 vertical at the Super 60 with 31 inches. Like, this guy, I probably say it, I use these terms and words, I overuse them probably, but like, that is a thoroughbred. And what I love, like, he can stick on the infield. Yes, we talk about the arm strength, like 93, like that's great, right? Like, he's got plenty of arm strength, but you watch the way he moves and with his body, like he's got quick feet. He's working through the baseball. His hands are really, really receptive and soft. He can move to the glove side. He can move to the backhand. He can throw from multiple angles. I thought his double play feeds were super crisp. Like, I was like wowed by the athlete. And then the swing continues to like clean up, and like, I think this guy, we have him at 11th right now in the state, and this is probably for a further discussion down the line here, a future podcast, but like, when we try to reorder these 2025s, I don't remember a class that is going to give me stress and nightmares the way this class is. Like, there are so many arms, especially down south this year in this class, that could factor into the top 10, and there's just only so many spots. So love what CJ DeKinga did. Love what Enzo Infelice did, because that is Enzo. Like, hey, go like, show you to the best of your ability, and I thought both of those guys did that. And like you said, Pete, like, earning that from the ProCase, like, we go into the Super 60, we run the ProCase the week before for a reason. We want to see these guys. We want to get an updated look. Hey, Shooter Hunt, leave a spot. We had a spot open for a standout, and that's why we do it. And these guys, credit to them. They're probably ticked because they want to come to the Super 60. They're top 15 guys in the class. Like, why are they not at the Super 60? It keeps getting harder, but they came to the ProCase and they earned it. And then they went to the Super 60 and just did more of the same, if not better. So it gets me fired up. Like, I'm pumped for those guys, because like, the players do it, right? Like, the players go out and just show out. We try to give them the opportunity and the venue and the experience and put them in the right place to be seen by the right people. But ultimately, it is on them. So, fired up, but awesome showing by both of those guys at the ProCase. And I think we're talking about the ProCase, and I know those two guys kind of trickle into the Super 60 here, so we can get into the Super 60 later. But that's what I had on the two standouts for me at the ProCase. And there were others as well that probably deserved to be there. Yeah.
The name that I was going to bring up next is Trey Myers. And the reason being is he was also on the Future Games team a few years back with CJ, DeKinga, and Enzo Infelice. That was, I think, Tyler and I's intern summer. Is that right? They were all on that same team together, or am I messing this up?
You're a little jumbled up, but it's okay. Enzo was our intern year. But the year after was Deckinga, Myers, Holst. Josh Holst was also on that team, who I know we're going to touch on, but yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. If you guys had anything on Trey Myers, I know his numbers, just for his size, like especially his run, I think he had probably one of the top 60s at that event. He has some really impressive tools.
Yeah, Drew, I'm going to use your favorite word. He's another thoroughbred. What is he, 6'5", 6'6"? I think we measured him at 6'5". And he is physical, filled out. You look at his quads in his round of BP, just the way those things are popping out of the pants. Like, he is tooled up, like you said, 6'5" runner. I'm blanking off the top of my head.
He was
what was it?
6'4" runner,
okay.
Just so you know.
But he's been to
yeah. Yeah, and I think he's been better than that in the past. But I
Hmm.
mean, if he keeps packing on muscle and quality strength and he's still running that good, like you don't see too many guys built at 6'6", 223. First off, that are running a sub 7. And he's touching that 6'5", 6'6" range, like that's elite company.
Yeah, and I'm looking up his outfield velo right now. I forget what it was off the top of my head.
At the ProCase, it
89.
was 89. Yeah, 101 exit velocity. It looks like he's kind of been steady like at 89 for the past couple of years.
Yeah,
But
and
he
that's
ran a
fine. I mean,
6.58 in 2023 at the Future Games. And I'm wondering, he comes to the ProCase in Shorewood at the Rhino Academy in the middle of the winter. You know, does the weather, does the being in the off season play a role on that 6'6" instead of a 6'58", and maybe that heat in Georgia at the Future Games kind of loosen him up for that 6'5"? But regardless, like guy can run. Yeah.
and the track too. Like the turf is that plays a big role into it too. How like slow the track is, how thick and like soft the turf can be. But no, I really liked his round of BP. I mean, he's got pretty dumb hand strength or hand speed and bat speed. Like he was averaging 76 miles an hour with the bat, and then like 23 miles an hour with the hand speed. I thought he took a really good round, strong. I mean, using the whole field with authority. I mean, yeah, there's things he can clean up in the swing, but he's long levered and there's a ton to dream on there. So, I mean, he's another surefire guy that would have fit right in at the Super 60, right? I mean,
And
someone
I know he
physical.
wanted to be there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, and that a lot of these guys did. And that makes it hard is the spots are limited and, we have to make choices. But he's a guy, like you said, would have fit right in. People need to know about him. I'm glad we're calling him out here. Like it's definitely a huge ceiling. And guys are not built like that, that can run that way, that have that frame, that have that easy juice like you were talking about. I was struck just by, and he's always been this way, but just how easy the ball was coming off the bat, and like you mentioned it, kind of spraying it around the yard, but like he was actively, it felt like trying to use the middle of the field. And that always impresses me because these young guys, like sometimes they can lack an approach and they want to all get to that, peak exit velocity number. And you see a ton of balls rolling over to the pull side, maybe getting 1 out of 10 where he actually times it up and elevates it and gets the true number. But no, I really liked what I saw to Trey.
yeah, and guys will be out to see him this spring. Like he is like on people's list right now. He's on the Cub Scout team this past fall, so people know about him. So I'm sure there will be people out to see him.
Yeah.
And then I think two of I think honestly probably just the group as a whole, favorite left-handed bats from the event, Davis Colley and Brady Schalmoser. And honestly, like personally, maybe Joey Aaron, throw him in there too. Like, so I don't know if you guys have anything on Colley. I mean, it was a really good round of BP, I thought.
Yeah, we can talk about Aaron as a two-way and a couple guys, but yeah, Davis Colley and Brady Schalmoser. I mean, Brady was the first guy to go. Me and Tyler were on hitting evals, and we were both just kind of looked at each other like it's the first hitter we've seen in a few months evaluating. Like so, the first like it's hard to gauge quite where we're at with the eyes, but we're like that was pretty good, and it ended up being one of the better ones of the day. Like really polished. We've long loved the bat from Brady. Super polished. He's got some juice too. I mean, he was using the whole field with ease. And Davis, he's more there was more power. Brady's probably more the bat to ball kind of hit for average guy right now, but the strength will come. And Davis, I mean, he can hit for average too, but he's got a ton of juice, and I love like the intent that he has in his swing. Like he was juicing some balls big time to the pull side and up the middle. So they were just two really impressive rounds for me.
I'm right there with you, Pete. Like starting off the event with Brady Schalmoser, it's like, dang, is it gonna get any better than this? Like it's such a pretty fluid, repeatable swing that's on balance. And I was actually throwing to the lefties at that event, which always gives me a unique perspective. I love doing it because you can kind of tell like where guys can handle pitches, where they like to swing it, like where they want the ball, where their sweet spot is and all that stuff. And Schalmoser, like he could handle pitches all around the zone. But he is super comfortable letting that ball travel and taking that pitch away and hammering it to left center. And then Davis Collie, it's just like they are different, the way they swing, because he's all about that controlled aggression. Like, I'm gonna, I'm in the box with a purpose, like with a presence, and there is a ton of presence to him in the box. And that he was on the barrel, like consistently elevating to the pull side, with that controlled aggression. Both really, really impressive rounds.
I actually have a quick story about Brady Schalmoser, just looking back a couple of years. Intern summer, where I'm up at the Rock covering a tournament, and I'm at MATC, and I go up to the coach, and I'm like, hey, like, who are some of your best players? And he listed off a couple of players, and Schalmoser was on that team, but he was not mentioned by the coach. So after the game, it was like, in my opinion, clear that Schalmoser was probably the best player on that team. So I was talking to the coach. I'm like, hey, like, why didn't you mention this Schalmoser kid? And he's like, well, that's actually my son. He's like, I didn't want to do that. Like, I just felt weird saying. I'm like, oh, that's all right. That's fair. But I just thought that was cool, and then now cool to see him at the ProCase.
Well, that's awesome, and that speaks to that there's some humbleness there, which I think rubs off onto the son. And Brady's always been a really respectful, quiet, just kind of go about your business. But I'm a big fan of Brady, and no, that's good to hear that his dad, wasn't shouting his name from the rooftops and let you figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
He probably figured, like, hey, if this guy's any good at what he does, like he'll find him. So.
Fun fact: my fiance's mom was his kindergarten teacher.
Brady's?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Brady. Yeah, she loved him too back when he was
right.
in her class.
All right. Well, that's definitely one to watch, and he's going to Wabash Valley. So like we're shouting him out here, but it's one of those like, hey, D1s, if you're listening, like, get on him early. Like, it's a guy that could very, very well blow up at Wabash Valley. He'll be a hard one to keep out of the lineup.
And then we also, I don't know if I'm doing this too early, or if you guys had a couple more hitters that you wanted to talk through.
Well, I wanted to shout out
ahead.
just Indiana. Like, kudos to Cooper Trinkle, Phil Wade. First off, like, there's some of their staff came up to the event, which they didn't have to do. But they wanted to see their guys, and they reached out. They pushed the ProCase to their guys, and they had a number of position players come up. A lot of really, really interesting left-handed bats. Brant Kendall, I thought, really, really stood out for me from Scottsburg. You guys may need to cross-check this for me, because I am not as locked in clearly to Indiana as I am Illinois. All right, so he's a Ball State commit, but he ran extremely well. It was like a 6.66 runner, and kind of like Davis Collie, there would just throw into him, like, there was presence all over him. Like, this kid wants to hit. He's almost like angry in the box, but he knows how to control it. And man, there's a lot of juice in the bat. He caught a couple to the pull side. I don't have the numbers broken down right in front of me, but I just, I wanted to call out a couple of their guys. Peyton Dickens, Cal Gates. I know I'm probably missing one or two, but Wyatt Pennington came. He's another. What's that?
So I didn't mean to cut you off. Mason Barth was one of my favorite guys too.
Mason Barth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Switch
yes.
hitter.
Well,
Switch hitter.
Just to add on Kendall Drew, he led the event in max distance of a 408 foot.
Okay.
So
it was
legit
for me. Yeah, I mean, everybody's swinging wood there. That kind of goes without saying, being a ProCase, but man, he's got some tools, like the way he runs, the bat strength, the juice. I liked that. I liked the future there. And then just a lot of athletic looking frames. Peyton Dickens, long levered, can run, left-handed bat. Mason Barth, you mentioned him, switch hitter. And then Wyatt Pennington, I thought, was another one worth mentioning, because he's really good as a position player, but you watch the way he throws the ball across the infield, like, his arm might be his carrying tool. I've heard it's really good on the mound. Now, he didn't throw. It's still early here in Illinois, Indiana, for guys to throw. But I did want to shout those guys out, Gavin. I think they deserve it. And, man, like you mentioned, Joey Aaron, I know he was a two-way guy we might touch on, but, like, every left-handed bat I thought was really interesting. Zach Bava, like, he's a fan favorite of mine. I love the way he plays the game. He shows better to me in game than he does in showcase, and he still showed well at the ProCase. I think he's close to breaking the Naperville North career record for hits. Which means something to me. He's a Naperville North grad, and that's my alumni as well. So anytime I can get some meat on the bone to shout out Naperville North, I'm gonna do it. But yeah, the Huskies over there. We'll see what Zach can do, and hopefully he breaks it early on his final spring season there.
And Drew, you kind of mentioned Joey Aaron here, but I mean, do you guys want to get into some left-handed arms? I mean, I feel like Josh Holst being uncommitted now is just kind of a big name to talk about from that group.
And even before that, I want to talk about like two of the two-way guys that stood out to me. Let's start with Joey Aaron, former future gamer. There were a lot of former future gamers that came to the ProCase, like Liam Arsich, Jackson Natanic, Joey Aaron. I mean, Zach Bava. The list goes on and on and on. But Joey Aaron is athletic. And you look at the movement patterns, like he's going to have to be a guy to watch. Like whether he's a draft guy right out of the gate or if he has to go to college, I don't know, because I think he's one of the ones that we've talked about. Like I think the power is going to come. But it's a loose, whippy swing. He sprays it around the yard. You watch the way he moves in the outfield, and we're indoors. There's only so much you can do, and it's like, that's an outfielder. Like, you can pick that out. Like, he could play all three spots. He moves with fluidity. And then you look at the arm, and it's like, wow, that is loose, whippy, quick. And I loved it on the mound, Pete. Like, I know we were going to kind of get into what he did on the mound. I loved it. It was 88, 89. I might have been a touch firmer. Like he was not one of the firmest arms there. But when you talk about operations, and I know he's had a ton of success on the mound in the past, like I really liked him. And then Jackson Natanic, I definitely think he deserves a shout out. Like the guy is a baseball player. He's had a presence in Brother Rice's lineup for a long time now. But can flat play shortstop. He was 94 across the infield. If it's hit to him, if he gets it, it's an out. Like it's pretty much that simple. Like it's a vacuum of a glove. Can throw from multiple slots, and then on the mound, all he does is spin the baseball at a high level. You know, you look at him. It's not your most projectable frame. He's not 6 feet tall, but the stuff is real. The stuff is really, really spins the heck out of the breaking ball up to close to 3,000 and. Those are two guys I had to get it out there, Gavin. So let me.
Yeah,
thanks
no,
for
Drew, and
actually
I want to hop in just really quick.
Okay.
Natanic. So a couple of years ago, Illinois State had a guy named Eli Dale, who was kind of like their closer. Sometimes he'd come in at like the 8th inning, 7th inning, 1 inning guy. He had like a sinker, slider, really good slider, super high spin. Ended up getting drafted by the Mariners. And honestly, Natanic kind of reminds me, on the mound at least, of him, of being like that guy that could just come in for an inning with a really good slider and just get guys out. So I'm excited to see him at Illinois State and how he does, and see if he's more two-way, goes on the mound, hitter, like we'll see. And
that's the cool thing about it, in my opinion, is he's truly a guy. There's not many of them out there. A lot of people think they are like true two-way guys. He is truly a guy that I don't know where it's going to end up being better, because he can really handle the bat. There's not a lot of swing and miss. He's got a feel to hit, and anybody that can play up the middle, like it's hard to say, okay, you're going to go pitch. So it'll be very interesting to see.
Natanic was probably my favorite guy defensively from this event, and what a problem Coach McBride has over our Brother Rice, because Triesenberg was honestly just as impressive. Like, I mean, if I'm a pitcher at Brother Rice, anytime a ground ball's hit up the middle, you know it's an out pretty much. Like, both of those guys are so good with the glove. It's natural. But I just had to throw that out there because, I mean, that's probably the best middle infield duo in the entire state. Like, I would think.
Triesenberg's a great call out. Like, another former future gamer. He's another guy. It kind of reminds me of Zach Bava. Like, a showcase setting does not do him justice. He is a game player. The guy's got all kinds of IQ, kind of leads by example. He is that steady Eddie, like does not show a ton of emotion, takes great at bats, uses the whole field. He is a tough out, like knows how to run the bases. So love that you called him out. But yeah, Gavin Triesenberg, he's an Arizona commit. And I think, Pete, you might have been getting in there on one of these guys.
Yeah. No, that's a good shout on Triesenberg. Not many guys can move like that at that size up the middle. But no, Natanic, I mean, he's always had like those big time actions, and they always show really well in IO and showcase and in game too. I mean, he's a vacuum, like you said, but I was really impressed with his bullpen. Like Drew said, I mean, you're right, not the most projectable body, but he keeps getting better. He was like 87, 88 last year. I didn't really see him pitch actually last year, so I couldn't speak to it. But he was up to 91, and it's not even the spring yet. So like clearly there's more in there. Like the spin, it's like that'll tell you too. Like he can spin the heck out of the baseball. That indicates some more. I mean, he was averaging 2,900 RPM on the slider. Like that's crazy. Um, so yeah, I mean, and going off Joey Aaron too, like that kid he's another one. I don't know what it's gonna be in 2 3 years, like which position he's gonna be if he has to pick, but I loved it at both spots. I really like the easy looseness, like the 3/4 slot, kind of that natural sink slider, changeup guy. I think he's got a really, really bright future. That Xavier on both sides of the ball.
And then, yeah, Pete, do you want to kind of get into some of these left-handed arms that you
Sure.
guys saw? I mean, Josh Holst, Lucas Grant, Jake Reifenberg.
Yeah, let's go with Holst first because he's uncommitted. Yeah, another former future gamer, like we said. I really, really, and I know Drew has mentioned this before, really love the way he moves down the mound. Like, tons of intent. Like, he's one of those guys where if you're on like a turf mound, you gotta load that thing up with plates because he's gonna move that thing, and it's gonna go like 5 feet on the turf if you don't stop it. Luckily, we had a pretty big mound we were using at the ProCase, so that thing wasn't going anywhere. But tons of force, tons of intent, clean, and you can project more on the body. Yeah, he's physical, but like there's you can and there's a ton of strength in there too. But like you can just tell as he gets older and more mature, like that body will continue to get like more athletic, a little trimmed up maybe, and just continue to get better. But he was up to, let's see, 92, sitting 90, 91. And yeah, I mean, the off speed, that'd be like the only knock right now is that the off speed might be a touch behind, but I mean, that is no concern really. I mean, the fastball is that good. I see it get a ton of swing and misses in and out of the zone. I mean, he racked up a ton of strikeouts last year. I think it was maybe about like 80 and like 50 innings just off the top of the head. But there's something to that fastball, and the changeup's really good when it's on as well.
Yeah, his changeup's always been his calling card, and what I love what you're saying about like his frame. So, what the way I look at Holst is he gives me starter vibes. You know, like I get starter
Like
vibes off of
workhorse,
Holst,
yeah.
especially if he can continue to develop and, you know, get that spin going. Because it flashes. Like it'll flash, you know, above average, but then it'll flash average. His changeup has long been his go-to, but like he's a guy to me that's gonna hold the velo. And that's ultra important as well when you start talking about, okay, starter versus reliever, where's this guy fit? So that was kind of my takeaway there on Holst. And he's long been a performer. And ever since he decommitted, I've been getting blown up. So there's definitely still schools that are looking for high-level left-handed arms. That it's why they are such a high commodity, why we value them so high from a ranking standpoint and all that stuff is there's a lot fewer left-handed arms than right-handed arms, and every school wants quality lefties, and you can never have enough of them. So, yeah.
No, you're
who
right,
else?
Drew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what
it
you
does
got?
flash really good, the breaking ball. Like, it does have good shape. Like, it's just the spin will occasionally be behind at times, but that's really not even, like, I'm not the biggest TrackMan nerd in the world, but talking with, like, someone like Josh Fields, that's not the end of the world at all. Like, if you got the right shape and if it tunnels well, that's fine. So, I would just like to see it firm up a little bit maybe in the future, but just, a couple pressure adjustments or moving the fingers around trying a new grip, that's an easy fix. That's why all these big time schools are on them right now.
Two other arms. I mean, I thought the lefties in general were really impressive. When you start talking about Joey Aaron, we just talked about Joshua Holst, Lucas Grant, Joliet Catholic, and then Jake Reifenberg Bennett. Lucas Grant, we've talked about him a lot on this podcast, so I won't go too crazy on him, but Purdue commit, keeps getting better. Was supposed to throw out the senior future games, had a little thing in the neck. Clearly, that's way behind him. and just did more of what we've been accustomed to seeing, like lived at the bottom of the zone. There's a slight little hesitation in the delivery that I think plays up like some deception. It almost makes the fastball look like it plays a little harder, but 3 pitches, a lot of strikes. I thought, he's one of the more polished arms we have in the class. Long performed. He's going to be a huge arm for Joliet Catholic this year. And then Jake Reifenberg. So Jake Reifenberg was a guy that's kind of been on our radar for a while. Like, he's one of those guys that you see as a young prospect. I want to say I started seeing videos of him, or maybe he came even to an event as a freshman, sophomore. And it was like 80, 82. But he moves right. It's good movement patterns. It's a quick arm. It's loose. It's clean. And those guys, just in general, obviously there's a lot of factors that go into it, but like those guys almost always get better and gain velocity, and his velocity has just skyrocketed over the last year and a half. Like, even looking back to the state games this past summer, and looking at his stats here, I think he was maybe the hardest throwing lefty that we had on the day, Gav. That might be hard to break down, but all these lefties were basically low 90s.
Yeah, sorry, they were all 92. Just going off what we got on the pitching stats sheet.
And like
here.
Reifenberg, what really stood out to me was like everything seemed really dynamic with movement in the zone. Like, his fastball's got some late life and tail to it. The breaking ball's got a little bit different shape to it, but then the changeup, it's like horizontal movement for days, to where like, okay, like he's naturally moving this baseball with the changeup. Now, can we make sure the arm action is the same as the fastball? Can we get the feel to be a strike every single time? But it's like, these are foundational pieces that excite you about a prospect, because his floor just continues to rise. And I don't think there's any slowing down with him. Like, he's got a lot more physicality to come in the frame, and like with the way he moves, like he is only going to throw harder. So I know I kind of just took the reins there on those two lefties, but feel free to add on to anything that maybe I missed.
No, you're totally right on both. Like, I think they're both really projectable. And they both just keep getting better each year. I think they're both really dynamic too. Like Lucas Grant, everything's moving a different way. And yeah, he's super polished. And that was the first time I'd ever seen Reifenberg in person. And it was a great look. Like you said, really dynamic. Really love the way the arm comes through too. There's definitely more in that tank. And yeah, I thought it was an awesome event for the lefties. Like, really wasn't too sure what was going to go down with these arms. Like, hadn't seen a few of them personally in some time, but I was really impressed, and I thought it was a great event.
And then how about uncommitted right-handed arm from Wisconsin, Sam Heft? He was up to like 93. I think he led the event with highest velo, and then his arm, he just had a really quick arm.
He impressed me. I don't know about you guys. I kind of thought he was pouring in strikes. With the firmest velo of the day. Like, I thought his fastball was in the zone, or at least around the zone a lot. And then kind of like Reifenberg, like, I thought he had some dynamic off speed. Like, I thought the breaking ball had some really good downer to it, and then he was mixing in a splitter. That's a guy, I mean, man, he should have plenty of kind of late pop-up schools to choose from. Because I think it's a borderline starter as well. Like, I think that remains to be seen. I'm sure Wisconsin guys have a lot more on him than we do. But man, to be uncommitted this late, popping a 93, he's got a really good looking frame on him. There's a lot to like on Sam.
Yeah, I was a big fan, and he was the one that I was actually talking to Fields about the TrackMan data, because his curveball did not spin. Like,
metrically, the RPMs.
Yeah, RPM-wise, yes. It was not a ton. It was like 1,500 to 1,700. But the shape and like the IVB and the tunneling was like really good. And just watching it, like, that's like the interesting thing with all the tech now. Like, you can watch a breaking ball, it'll be a banger, and it's like 1,900 RPM, and you're like, wait, what? And then you see like Natanic and it's 2,900, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But it just doesn't always like line up in that way. But it's because it's more of like the shape and the maybe the how it's spinning, like the trueness of the spin, I'm blanking on the correct word for that. The axis. Efficiency.
Spin efficiency.
Potentially, yeah. Just all that stuff like plays into it. So no, I was really impressed by him.
And then I mean that kind of wraps up, I think, or unless you guys have anyone else you want to touch on before we move on. But
no, I think you're great. I was actually gonna kind of just say like I thought the depth of the event was extremely quality. That's probably not the right way to put it, but I was very impressed with the depth of the event. There was plenty to talk about, plenty to look at, and like we kind of mentioned to start, like 2 guys ended up earning Super 60 invites off of it, and I'd probably say let's get into the Super 60 next.
Okay.
So if you guys are cool with that, like just some takeaways.
Just really quick too, we had a good Pro Scout turnout too. I don't know if we mentioned that, but that was really, really relieving to see. I was super happy for those guys to get the showcase in front of that amount of school or teams.
Yeah, and that's something that kind of has organically grown since we started the event. I think the first year we ran the event, we didn't know what to expect. We just put it on the board because we were like, man, there's a lot of guys that need to be seen that aren't coming to the Super 60. There might have been like one guy that showed up 4 years ago. And ever since, it's just gradually gotten better. I want to say this year we had 15 to 20 guys there. Last year we probably had about 15, maybe 12 to 15. So, yeah, Gavin, I think that's a really good call out. And it means a lot to me, that they're wanting to come out and see these guys and support what we're doing.